going to start to strip down this chair for reupholstery. It's a very modern reproduction chair and it's been put together by machine and hand. So it's got some very firm scrolls, and these buttons have possibly been shot in with a machine. So I'm going to attempt to take them out, and it will all be put back together by hand, so it may or may not look the same. I'm hoping that I can get these bits off and reuse them, but it's going to be very interesting to do. As a traditional upholsterer for over 30 years, I realised I needed to understand the construction of this very modern factory-built chair before I started stripping it down. The manufacturers were really helpful, answering my email immediately and confirming the chair was upholstered around a solid wood frame. My initial plan for this video was to strip the chair quickly and concentrate on the recover. However, as I quickly discovered, it was built on cardboard with the foam stapled and glued beautifully in place, and as I could find no other videos showing this type of reupholstery, I've now made a more in-depth stripped down video of the chair, and I will recover it in the next video, part 2. Stick with this video and it will give you an idea of whether you can or want to try reupholstering this type of chair. On a traditional chair, I would have to remove some of the internal upholstery, but I'm going to attempt to recover this one with the original board and foam still in place. The first thing we do is remove the base. I have a wooden mallet, 2 staple lifters. This one has 4 prongs, which is really good for getting hold of the staples, and a little pair of pliers. So you just get in under your staple, give it a bash and pull it out, and continue all the way around till all those are out, and if they don't come out, you've got your little pliers just to help them on their way. Some people just rip everything, but I prefer to do it like this. A quick note about fire retardancy. You must, if a chair is younger than 1950, use fire retardant materials, the foam, the covers, and you must put a label on it. This is the original, and I will supply my own to put back with this one. When you take your pieces off, have a look inside to see how they've cut, especially around the legs. If when you come around you come across a piece of staple and it's just too short to get out, I could get this one out, but just to show you, just hammer it back in. The most important thing is that you have a smooth finish for your new bit of fabric to sit on neatly and not catch on. Continue around the bottom of the chair, removing all the staples you can see from the fabric. As I said before, you could just rip the fabric off and leave the staples in. The problem with that is you're going to get several layers of staples, and when you come to staple your new bit of fabric on, you're going to be hitting them with the new staples and they're not going to go in, and then you're going to have to get those out as well. So I always try and remove as many as I can. I've now removed all the staples from the underside of the chair. The next thing to do is to work out which bits we want to take off next. Now if you have a look around your chair, you can see which bits overlap which. The back is always the last to be put on when you're reupholstering the chair. So it's going to be the first bit we take off, and you can keep a note of in what order you take things off, take photos, and then the way that you take them off is the way that you will put them back on. So the first to come off is the last to go back on. As this is a very modern chair, it's been put together with modern techniques, and it's tacked on with a metal back tack strip. And to get that off, I'm using this staple lifter, and I'm just pulling it back because we've got to sort of open the hinge and then unhook the fabric to get it off. I've opened up the first side, and I'm just going to use the flat-headed staple lifter to wedge it under the metal back tack strip and just hammer it in to get the staples out, and then use the little pliers if I need to. Now you can remove the strip from the fabric, or you can just leave it on. If you remove it, you're going to have to unhook it from all the little hooks. There's 4 hooks on each little section on this one, so there's quite a lot to remove if that's the way you want to do it. And then when we can pull it back, we can start to see the construction of the chair. Cardboard, some kind of fiberboard that is completely new for me. A little bit of foam going around with the fabric and gripped on with these little teeth. I've now completely removed the back, and all the bits you take off you can keep to help you with pattern pieces that you're going to put back on, but make absolutely sure that you cut them bigger, because all the bits you take off should and probably will have been trimmed down close to the staples. We can now get a really good look at the inside of the back, and the next thing to do is to unpick the piping cord. Again, a lot more staples. As always, be really careful of your woodwork when your staples are very close to it. Once again, when you take your piping off, keep an eye on the shape of how they've put it on, and then you can replace it in the same way. It's always a little trickier when you're trying to get staples out against a lump or a ridge of something. So you just have to work out for yourself which is the best way. And if you can't get into it one way, then you have to get into it the other. But if you're going this way, you can't lift it quite as well. So you're going to need your little pliers. The next thing to do is remove the cardboard. I would like to leave it on, but the front goes under it and the sleeve goes under it, and so it's going to have to come off. I have put some marks. My video was playing up and not focusing, so I've marked them already, but as you can see, just so that I can put it back exactly where it came off. So marking all around and at the top as well. I'm then going to remove the staples, and we have to be really careful because I don't have any more of this hardboard, and if you're doing a one-off chair you want to be able to put it back, so very gently lift that staple, and I'm using the flat one because it will be kinder on the hardboard. Just to lift that out, okay, and then I shall go all the way around. Hopefully that will come off in one piece. Now there were no staples at the top, but I've removed part way down the side, but I'm going to remove the top, which is at the moment the bottom. I don't think it would slip, but just in case. So I'm going to take these bottom ones out, and then I'll continue on the sides. Okay, so that's come off. Thankfully it's not been glued on. And we have more board. And here are the buttons. Wow, so easy to do things if you're working in a factory. So they will have to come out, and I will be putting them back more traditionally. So the next thing we do, we look at what then comes on over the top, and it's the arms. The bottom and the side I've unstapled, and on this edge we have another piece of the metal back tack strip. Okay, so I'm going to just remove this back tack strip as I did on the back. And then when we come to the top, it has a fibre back tack strip. Exactly the same. So just remove all the staples and then we'll have another look. If we look at the teeth here, the fabric has come off these much easier. And you can see here this very, very thin foam sheet that they've just used as a little bit of wadding has just come over the teeth. So they're holding the foam and the fabric together with those teeth. Now I want to preserve this. There's no point buying a new bit. So I've got to really carefully try and get those off those teeth so I can put it back on the next one. A quick close-up of where I've taken the foam off the teeth. So these sharp little teeth have held the foam and the fabric firmly in place. You can see also how much foam they've fixed inside this metal back tack strip, so it's just half of it. And if we look at the fabric, you can see at this angle where they've cut it down. So always allow plenty. I would allow easily somewhere between 2 and 4 inches all round your pattern piece. The more you leave, the more you've got to hang onto, and you can always trim it down later. We can now take a look at the back tack strip. This has got an awful lot of staples in it. You wouldn't normally see these many. If you get it off carefully and you don't have any more, you can reuse it. Now the back tack strip is off and we just have to remove these staples. I've never seen so many staples in a chair, but anyway, it's well made. And just take a little look at the foam. This was ripped inside, but it's just a thin layer and it's not even covering the whole side of the arm. And there's more hardboard, and hopefully we won't have to take that bit off. So now you have the pattern piece for your arm. The next thing to come off is the piping that's sort of fixing the scroll in place, and it just comes to here. So I'm just going to take this piece off. Having removed the piping, I can now feel that this scroll is, I don't know if you can see, but it's quite loose. So when this bolt comes out, we should be able to remove it, but we've got to remove all the staples, and it's obviously held very firmly in place just with fabric. But the next piece that comes on top is the front plinth. And if you take a good look, they've stapled down the piping and this front bit, and when that front piece is removed, we should be able to turn it back and then unpick from inside. So having removed the staples, and you can see they've just put a fine piece of polyester wadding here, which is stapled here and over the back tack strip. So by removing the little bit of wadding, and save this because it's all fire retardant materials, and you will have to buy a meter at least if you replaced it. And you can see here where they've put the back tack strip, but they've left this corner, and that's to give it a nice sharp finish on that edge. So once the back tack strip is off, we're just left with a few staples holding this piece in. Okay, so the next thing is just to undo these staples. So we can now see that the piping was first stitched to the plinth to get it really straight. When you go to take the arm off, have a look at how it's put on. Now I can feel along here the edge of this piece of wood inside the arm, and the stripes all need to run parallel to each other. So we can see here, feeling along this edge, how they've come along straight, and then when we get to the bend, they're pulled straight so they sit again level. So when you turn it the right way up, all the stripes are going to be level. And you can always jiggle about with that. If you just put in a couple of sort of temporary staples to start with, have a look, check it, and move it if you need to. I'm now going to take off the wadding, and I've just put some marks on here just to remind me. The next thing is to remove the back tack strip, which is completely flat and pushed right tightly against the piping. The easiest way to get the back tack strip off is to put your staple lifter behind the back tack strip. Give it a whack and the staples might just pop out. If not, you just need to finish pulling them out with your pliers. And then more staples. We just have to remove these and then we can get onto the seat. I said earlier that a stronger person would be able to just rip these off, but actually by just loosening these staples, I can now pull it too. There are different ideas when upholstering a chair as to whether you do the front or the seat first. I prefer generally to do the front because you can then, if there's any gaps between the front and the seat, you can pack into the seat, and it's just easier to do, especially if you're buttoning. But I'm now just going to remove the seat because the chair's upside down and it's easier to get at. I've now completely removed this edge of the seat. This has been stapled and glued, but I'm pretty sure I can recover this without having to take the wadding off. Sometimes you do need to. Take a good look at how the seat has come over and been folded. Okay, and how it fits in with the foam, how the joins have been made on the corners so that you can reproduce those when you do the next layer. The next thing I'm going to do is undo the seat along the sides and the back, but be really careful that you don't unstaple the webbing. This is also a slightly new technique for me. Normally you put the seat on and then you pull this piece of the inside arm down over the seat. Another new technique for me, on the front of the chair, the lower half hasn't been attached to the chair at the side. It's just been pulled down really tightly, and that's why I've got this bulk here where they've just pulled it tight and stapled it to the chair. After they've stapled, so they've pulled it, stapled it and cut it. So this piece would have had plenty to pull on to get down here. The next thing, once you've undone all the staples, is just to yank the seat cover off. And this is really, really held firmly by the foam, but that's a good thing. When you've got it off, you have another pattern piece. As I said, allow minimum of, on this piece, 4 inches all around, because you've got to have enough to get down. You've got to have enough to hold on to yank around the frame. You trim it after you've stapled it. And these little cutout pieces, you'll cut into those when the fabric is in position on the chair. We're now going to remove the front. And the first thing I'm going to do is take off all the staples that I can see that are holding it down. But if we just take a look here, the reason why the arms go on first is because everything comes down, all the creases, all the joins, and it's really it's very tidy, but then it stops all the dust getting caught in everything, so it's cleaner. I've turned the chair upside down because it's much easier to work on a firm surface. You can see here where they've stapled really closely to the foam. That gives a good guide and pulls the fabric in really nice and tightly so you can get the piping on and then fit the back up tightly to it as well. And you can see here where it comes over at the bottom. The staples are now all removed that are holding the front down, and the next thing is to remove the buttons. Be really, really careful of the hardboard because we don't want to remove it. So actually, because these staples are slightly raised, I can just pull them out with the pliers. I can then nip the arms together. And if we go around to the front, all you have to do then is just pull out the button. Where they're caught under the frame, you can just twist them. The next thing to do is just pull it all off. This at the bottom here had one staple onto the frame, so you need to get in it because I'm not planning to remove this foam. I will have to reupholster it slightly differently, but I've worked it out that I can actually get into here. This arm will be tricky, and just staple it back to the frame. Okay, so we can just remove all this top cover and then continue with the arms. The next thing is to remove the scroll and the arm cover. So I'm going to continue unpicking every bit of staple that I can see along here under the arm, and the bottom is just stapled underneath here. On the back of the arm, the staples are here, but because it's pulled in here between the two bits of hardboard and the frame, I'm not going to be able to remove that unless I remove all the foam and everything on the chair, and I don't want to do that. So what I will do, then just cut across here and just play it by ear so that I don't have to remove all of this, because I can feel that it's all been just pulled over and it isn't actually fixed to anything there. Having unpicked this piece of scroll, I can now see that I can just take that off, but we're caught at the bottom. So I really want to have a look in here, and I think if I just move this corner, it's not going to cause me too much trouble. But the foam is stapled. Luckily, it's only a small piece. I could just rip the foam over it, but I'm going to want to put it back, and I'm worried that I will hit the staples. I think these staples are rather cheap. They split. Oh, that one came out beautifully. So I want to try and get those out without damaging the foam, but if they all come out like that, no problem. And the next thing is just very carefully, because it's glued on, try to lift that foam off the glue. Okay, and I can glue that back on afterwards. So now that I've got this bit removed, I don't really want to take this off unless I have to. I can get inside there much easier. So you just feel along where it's caught, take out those staples, and then the whole thing will come off. So I just need to undo this bolt at the back and push it through, and that's will come away. You can now see the removed scroll. So easy. It's just done in one piece and put in place in staples. So that's going to be a really easy bit to put back. So by pulling this back, and it wouldn't actually be too difficult to move the front as well, and then you could pull it right off. But if we can look right inside here, I think you can see where the arm is also stapled, and there's only two little staples holding that, and then everything else is pulled underneath. So when we've got this far, the next thing is to pull it through. It's held so tight with this foam that I've actually ripped it, and you will only get it, I'll only get it so far because it's held in here. Now I want to see how much I can take out, and then I'm going to cut down here as close as I can. So you want to get as close under this foam as you can. So just pull the foam and snip into it. And if you can rip it, if you're strong enough to rip it, snip and rip. Absolutely fine. Oh, there we go. And if you can't get it out one end, pull it up from the bottom. There we go. And the other arm the same. So when I come to put the arm back, I can just staple in there a couple of places because I can get my gun in there, and that will hold fine. And the foam is so firm that that's going to hold that in place. To see part 2, the recover, and more videos on soft furnishing and reupholstery, please like, subscribe and hit the bell to be notified. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.